Greetings and welcome to another episode of Diamond Dave Retrospectives, in which I, Diamond Dave, shall be reviewing my work during the years I've been on YouTube. In this episode, I shall be reviewing my 2010 film Enforcer Butch. The year was 2010, so by this time I was on YouTube for 2 years, and I had done many things during my first 2 years of being on YouTube, from short action films to documentary, parody, comedy, and horror. Now I had a brand new HD 1080 camera, as my original video cassette one stopped working. I was wanting to evolve and get with the times because YouTube itself was changing. High definition videos were becoming a thing, and there were short films being uploaded which were of a professional quality by other YouTubers, and I, despite my limited resources, wanted to be part of that and make my own work more professional. I was writing more ambitious scripts. My stories and film scripts were becoming much more ambitious, and with those ambitious scripts, I required a bigger number of people to be involved as both my cast and behind the scenes crew. I required more advanced editing software to achieve the content that I had written down on paper in my scripts, and another set of eyes to assist in realizing my visions. Simply put, I needed help. Making a film is not a one-man operation, and I couldn't do all of this by myself. So enter Ross McConaughey, who I had befriended through mutual friends. He, like me, was into filmmaking and was very skilled with the camera, and additionally he had access to advanced editing software, which was capable of all sorts of incredible special effects, like CGI gunfire, 3D blood spurts, and explosions. So I was fortunate that I found him, given that I had written a new action movie script which required those things. So I approached him with the script and asked him if he could help me make this, and he kindly agreed. So with the combination of my scripts and ideas, along with Ross's camera and editing skills, we began our collaboration, which began a whole new era for my channel. I wrote this film to be a remake of my original action movie Street Hero for a number of reasons. Most prominently because I wanted to make a proper full-throttle action movie without the constraints that I had when I made Street Hero. Street Hero was made in academic circumstances, and because of that, there were rules which I had to follow which prevented me from making the action movie I originally intended. Don't get me wrong, I was happy with how Street Hero turned out, but this was a new opportunity, as I was long out of school by then, and these were my rules and my free time, which enabled me to produce the action movie I had longed to make, and with Ross's help, I was able to do that. I had also wanted to revisit the character of Big Bad Dave, the antagonist from Street Hero. I didn't feel he was as intimidating as he could have been, and as a villain he wasn't that menacing. It was basically just me wearing a long grey coat over my school uniform, and I felt that he was underused and didn't have that much to do as a villain, given that he only appears halfway through the film and is basically there for the sake of serving as an antagonist, just to deliver a couple of villainous quips and then be quickly defeated. But those were my early days of making films, and I was heavily limited in what I could do with Street Hero in both the technical and acting side of things. So I wanted to give Big Bad Dave a makeover, a new and improved Big Bad Dave, if you will. I pulled out all the stops, both in his appearance and the way I portrayed him as an actor, to create a genuinely convincing and terrifying villain who could be taken seriously by the audience once he appears on screen. I started with his new look. I really wanted to look the part of a genuine crime boss. For me, my attire was my first priority. I remember going out to different clothing retailers and buying different garments for myself to wear as the new and updated Big Bad Dave. I bought a new long black trench coat just to reinforce that gangster look. I also bought a black waistcoat, suit trousers, shoes, and additionally I wore black leather gloves, a black necktie, a white smart shirt, and finally a circular shaped lens pair of sunglasses. All that combined together gave me that authentic look of a proper villain who would radiate an intimidating presence. I will expand on my portrayal of Big Bad Dave in this film as we get on with the review, so here we go. This is Enforcer Butch, and it was uploaded on the 22nd of June 2010. As you not being what you are, you may have proved yourself to be a very reliable and valuable asset.
I didn't do anything!
Silence! I have hard evidence that you've been working as an informant trying to get information on me. You know how I deal with people who upsets me, especially informants. If it were up to my better nature, I would spare you, but at this stage of my plan, I can't afford any screw-ups. However, I can grant you the opportunity to die quickly and painlessly. Here's the deal. Heads, you die quick and painlessly. Tails, however, you will suffer a long, horrible, grueling undignified descent to hell. Here's your imagination. Delicious. Okie dokie, a rather impressive entrance for the new Big Bad Dave, even if I say so myself. It was funny filming the chase sequence that day because it was in broad daylight and it was right outside a cinema. How ironic. And I remember employees and workers at the cinema leaning up against the windows like this to look at what we were doing outside, because there was me dressed up in my full Big Bad Dave gangster gear. We had balaclavas, we had toy guns, and a guy with a tripod and a camera, and they were probably wondering what the hell were we doing. But originally in the script, the chase sequence took place entirely in the forest, where the informant, the double agent who's been fingered out in Big Bad Dave's syndicate as a traitor and an informant, it starts off with him running through the forest on the run with both Big Bad Dave and his two underlings chasing him, all three of them chasing him at once. But we decided to start it off at the cinema. Just starts with two of Big Bad Dave's goons chasing the informant and deliberately chasing him in the direction where Big Bad Dave is hiding in the forest. awaiting to punish the informant personally, which I thought was really good because I thought it added to the character of Big Bad Dave by making it start off that it was just two goons chasing the informant, and as long as he got somewhere to safety, he'd be out of danger. But the fact that this was a pre-planned attack orchestrated by Big Bad Dave, he ordered his two minions to deliberately chase the informant and in the direction of the woods, lure him into the woods where he was waiting, and then he would sprang out from behind a tree and wallop, give him the clothesline from hell, clotheslined him. I remember we had to do a lot of takes doing that of poor Johnny having to constantly run into my forearm as I jumped out from behind the tree. But it adds to Big Bad Dave's character in that he is very systematic and meticulous in how he orchestrates his crimes. Even in broad daylight, he's very tactical and would plan out such an attack in order to punish someone who he suspects to be an informant. So because I felt he was underused as a character in Street Hero, when I wrote the script for Enforcer Butch, I deliberately put Big Bad Dave at the very beginning of the film, just so I could reintroduce him in this brand new remade form and give him a good introduction scene as the villain. He just springs out, wallop, floors the informant with one blow, just to establish him as a genuinely threatening antagonist. And as you can see, I'm all dressed for the part, and even if I say so myself, I do believe I have that very authentic look of a powerful crime boss, which Big Bad Dave is supposed to be. Regarding how I chose to portray Big Bad Dave, I took a number of approaches in how I was going to personify him as a character. I played him very straight, very serious, and very dark. Very rarely even cracking a smile or changing his facial expressions or emotion. Just this very straight and serious approach. And personality-wise, I wanted him to be very polite and well-speaking. So I delivered my lines of dialogue very politely in this very eloquent way. I must admit, I'm very disappointed in you. Sort of to give him that very sophisticated criminal personality, almost make him seem gentlemanly in a way in how he articulates himself, even though he's a complete nutter. And he very rarely loses his temper. I wanted to make him level-headed and calm throughout most of the film, and on very rare occasions would actually lose his temper ever so slightly. One of my stances in visually portraying him was to give him a permanent angry and stern expression on his face. So every time I appeared as Big Bad Dave in this film, I always deliberately sort of furrowed my brows like this to give him this permanent cross look. Big Bad Dave, the crossest man in Northern Ireland. Now, I did this for a couple of reasons. Firstly, to make him look evil, just to give him that very sly, nasty, evil little man. Like, he just has this very stern look on his face. And also for representation and symbolism, that even though he comes across as polite and eloquently spoken, and for the most part is very calm in his demeanour, at the same time, this permanent angry and stern expression that he has is a constant warning that behind this composed demeanour, he is a very dangerous, violent, psychopathic criminal, and he is just repressing so much anger and violence behind this articulate, calm front, and he could just snap at any time. So that was my stance on portraying Big Bad Dave in this film. Eloquent, sophisticated, for the most part calm, but always looking as if he's in a permanent state of anger, as a representation of the true psychopathic villain he is. I wanted to give Big Bad Dave a gimmick in this film, the coin, and yes, I did take it from Batman. Two-Face is one of my favourite Batman villains, so I wanted to take that flip of the coin gimmick that he had and implement it into my own character with a bit of a unique twist. So I wrote this quirk into Big Bad Dave's personality, that he would decide how he kills or executes someone depending on which side of the coin it lands on. If it lands on heads, Big Bad Dave will be merciful and give you a quick and painless death. Just a quick shot to the head and you'll be dead. Quick and painless. But if it lands on tails, he will allow his inner sadism to come out and will torture his victim to death in a very slow and painful manner. So if you get caught by Big Bad Dave, depending on which side of the coin it lands on, you're fucked anyway. You're going to be dead. It just depends on whether it's going to be quick and painless or slow and torturous, whether it be heads or tails. And what I like about how all of us, me, Matthew Girvin, Chris Graham and Johnny, how we all performed this scene together, me as the boss, those two as my underlings, and Johnny as the unfortunate informant. I liked how I just casually take out these big pair of garden shears from the suitcase, give them to my henchman, who was played by Matthew Girvin, and just calmly say to him, use your imagination, and I just stand back and watch as they torture this man to death while I do nothing but just watch with pleasure. Which is that's how I wanted to portray Big Bad Dave. He is not the type of villain who would get his hands dirty, because he's so powerful and omnipotent. He just passes the task off to his subordinates to do all the gruesome, dirty, murdering work for him, while he calmly stands and watches on, and I just say the words delicious and casually put a cigar to my mouth. Now, in saying the words delicious whilst watching my henchman mutilate a man to death, so it sort of gives a very slightly disturbing implication in Big Bad Dave's character that, akin to alcohol or drugs, Big Bad Dave gets some sort of a high out of watching his own henchmen kill people. And when he was editing it, Ross McConaughey came up with this idea to make my voice sound mechanical and robotic. So he put an effect in over my voice, which means every time I speak, it sounds as if that there are two people speaking simultaneously, just to sort of give that mechanical voice effect. Back in 2012, Ross and myself conducted an audio commentary for this film, which you can find down in the archives of my channel from 2012. And whenever I asked him about where he got the idea from, he just felt he wanted to spice up the voice a bit, and he described it, making it want to sound Dalek-esque, which is quite a good way of putting it. And I thought it was a cool idea because it just makes me even more creepy that I have this very unnatural robotic voice, which means either one or two things. Either Big Bad Dave has one of those electric larynxes, electric voice boxes fitted due to some sort of undisclosed throat problem, probably from smoking too much cigars, or perhaps even more disturbingly, there's something unnatural or supernatural about him, which is something that I attempt to explore a couple of years later when I try to do a prequel film on Big Bad Dave as a character, but we'll cover that in another episode. As for now, on with this review of Enforcer Butch.
Butch, it's me. Be here as soon as possible. I've got an important assignment for you.
Okay, pay attention. These are the list of addresses you must deliver the drugs to.
Yes, sir, but why do I need to deliver a load to Banbury Water Station?
You are in no position to question my orders. You are an underling. Know your place in my syndicate. You take orders and ask no questions. Understand?
Yes, sir. Sorry, sir.
Good. You should take no more than half an hour to complete your task. Once you have finished the delivery, you are to report to the base and await further instructions.
Get off! Come with me! Get off! Get off!
Okie dokie, so this is something that was altered quite a bit from the original script. Originally, in between that scene of Big Bad Dave and his henchmen torturing the informant to death, and the following scene that shows the hero Butch, played by Ruben, who played James Bond in the GoldenEye 64 video. There was supposed to be a scene, a full scene in between those segments of the film, which was supposed to provide exposition for the plot and the characters. The subtitles that you just saw and the voice that went along with it, Butch, it's me, get here as soon as possible, I've got an important assignment for you. That was actually Ross McConaughey speaking and delivering lines, because originally we did film a full sequence of scenes between Ross and Ruben. Now, Ruben's character in this film, as the title would suggest, he is an independent law enforcer for hire who is summoned by a detective or ex-policeman to go out and take down dangerous criminals who are otherwise untouchable by normal methods. And the scene was all recorded. We had a full sequence of scenes between Ross and Ruben. Ross providing some exposition about Big Bad Dave and what he was planning to do and why Butch needed to go out and stop him. We even had a very good witty line in it that Ross delivered about the informant, because the informant was supposed to have been working for Ross, like Butch. And in the scenes that we recorded, Ross said something along the lines of, "I sent a man out to spy on Big Bad Dave, and Big Bad Dave sent him back." And he sort of threw out a plastic bag containing unseen human remains in it, because it had blood. There was blood in the bag from a fake ghost face mask that I had. It was one of those blood spurting masks, and we sort of put that in a plastic bag to make it look as if that Big Bad Dave had sent the mutilated remains of the informant back to Ross as a warning. But unfortunately, we weren't able to include this scene in the final cut of the movie, because in those days YouTube had this really stupid, ridiculous 10-minute time limit rule on videos, which meant that I wasn't allowed to upload a video that exceeded 10 minutes. So due to time constraints, we had to cut that sequence out, and that's where I think this film falls flat a bit. I just felt that there wasn't enough exposition for the plot and the characters, because Big Bad Dave just suddenly appears at the beginning, and Butch just suddenly appears now as this character sort of weeding in on Big Bad Dave's operations. But I felt that there wasn't enough explanation or in-depth dialogue given to sort of build that up, to make the plot a bit more three-dimensional, along with the characters' motivations. Oh, all of a sudden Butch is called for this assignment, and then he just is suddenly there. I just felt that because we couldn't include that scene between Ross and him, that we missed out on being able to give a proper plot and explanation for the events of this film. Although, from lines that have already been said so far, and lines that have yet to be said in upcoming scenes later on, we do allude to what is going on. We do allude that Big Bad Dave has a plan, and it's up to Butch, this independent law enforcer, to stop him. That's just my own personal opinion as the writer. Maybe it works better that we didn't have the exposition, sort of the case of less is more. Leave it up to the imagination of the audience of what the villain's motivation is. And again, we would have had it in the film. It was just down to that 10 minutes rule that YouTube had at the time. That's why I was unable to upload videos longer than 10 minutes, and we wanted to concentrate on accelerating the plot forward so we could get to the main action. So maybe it probably did work out the way it did. Again, it's just my opinion as the writer.
So whereabouts does your boss hide?
He's hiding in an abandoned mental asylum in the outskirts of town.
So what is what with my town?
He needs to rebuild his empire, and Bangor's a perfect place to start.
And how many guards are at the hideout?
There's only 2 or 3 at his hideout. The rest of his guards are dispersed around town.
Convinced?
Oh, I told you everything I know!
Let's end it.
This scene does provide a little bit of exposition, which is good enough, really, because the henchman who Butch captures basically says that Big Bad Dave needs to rebuild his empire, and Bangor, the town, would be a perfect place to start. So there's a little bit of implication that Big Bad Dave had an undisclosed coup de grace on his syndicate, and he's been reduced to a small army desperate to rebuild his forces again. So there's a little bit of implication there of what Big Bad Dave's additional motives are. He suffered some kind of off-screen coup and is now desperately trying to rebuild his army again and using Bangor as a means to do so. I also like how my friend Ruben portrays Butch, the protagonist of this film. When I wrote the script, I wrote Butch to be your stereotypical action hero like Sylvester Stallone, Bruce Willis, Jason Statham, Dwayne Johnson, etc., those type of stereotypical tough action heroes. And he did a very good job of what I wanted him to do in the script, sort of playing this very determined, hardened law enforcer or cop, whatever you want to refer to him as in his job. He's probably been hardened and suffered hardships and seen horrible things during his life and career, which is why he's chosen to be a crime fighter, and he will stop at nothing to get justice and stop the bad guys in the end, as seen in that scene there. Even though he is the protagonist, he can also be quite ruthless as well, because even though the henchman who he captures divulges the necessary information that he's looking for, such as the location of Big Bad Dave's hideout and what Big Bad Dave's planning to do, even though he gives Butch that information, he still dies because Butch is on a roll. He just wants to stop it all. He just wants to stop the madness and the threat that Big Bad Dave is posing to his town. In his words, you will notice he says, "What do you want with my town?" which shows that he's very protective of his home turf and the people who live in it, and he wants to keep them safe from villains like me. And it also sets up what the final confrontation might look like, what's going to finally happen whenever these two opposing forces finally meet. Because you have Butch, who is very tall and big and built like a brick shithouse. That's another reason why Ruben was so good for this role, because there was a lot of physicality involved. As you will see in the upcoming action sequences coming up, he's got quite a lot of physical acting and work to do. And there's me as Big Bad Dave, who is comparatively physically shorter and probably definitely nowhere near as strong as Butch would be. So what happens whenever these two forces clash? It's a bit like Batman and the Joker in a way, because you can tell usually who will probably be more physically dominant in a fight, a hand-to-hand fight between these two characters, depending on the physical attributes of one or the other. And that's something I like to look at in this film as well, because whenever we finally do meet face to face. After all, him fighting my henchman, we do have a showdown in the end. The guy who played the henchman in this scene, who Butch captures and questions, he is played by the same guy who played the informant at the beginning of the film, Johnny Bates. He actually plays 3 separate, unrelated characters in this film who all die. They all meet their ends. That's why I sort of nicknamed him the 3-hit wonder at the time that we made this film. He played the informant who gets killed by me at the beginning. He's just been killed by Butch here in this scene, and he plays one of the foot soldiers guarding my hideout in this upcoming climax of the film. But that's the magic of movie making. You can recycle the same actor more than once. So this is now the final action sequence of the film, where Butch storms Big Bad Dave's hideout. Now, this was a condemned building. It was no longer being used, but we had access to it. Originally, we were going to film all of this action inside the building, but we were unable to get in, so we used the exterior of the building instead, which I think works better. Now, all of this was just Ross working away with the camera and improvising these action scenes that I had written into the script. He was just playing away with the camera and doing all this different stuff with Ruben and the other guys involved in this. I was busy reciting my dialogue for the upcoming sequence between myself and Ruben, but I did do a couple of shots like this one here. That particular shot of me from behind with my coat blowing in the wind was inspired from The Dark Knight, where the Joker's standing at the top of the skyscraper waiting for Batman to arrive with his coat blowing in a similar fashion. Originally, this scene did have dialogue, but because we didn't have a microphone and there was quite a wind that day, you couldn't make out what was being said, so Ross put in subtitles instead. So we're intercutting between Ruben doing all the action and me just calmly sitting atop my castle, so to speak, just waiting for him to arrive, because I am expecting him. Big Bad Dave is just there lying in wait, and Butch is just storming his base, letting all hell loose, fighting through all of his forces, and Big Bad Dave's just calmly waiting for him. I like the way how Ross cut the scenes. Every time I went to reach for my cigar to take it out of my mouth, he would cut it at that point where I reach for my cigar. Bit of a continuity error of Butch losing his sunglasses. And there's me with my unlit cigar. In hindsight, I could have got someone to light it for me so I could smoke it properly, but there you have it. And now here's the final standoff.
So you're the one who's been interfering with my plans. I must say, you're very brave to come against 3 of them. Either very brave or very foolish.
And maybe both.
I knew something was wrong. Whenever my operatives at the motor station contacted me and informed me that the deliverer had not arrived with the cargo,
Well, your delivery boy was delayed.
I advise you not to mock me. Do you know who I am?
Oh, I know exactly who you are.
Then you'll know perfectly well that I have personally killed even the most skilled of operatives, some of which were your friends.
You evil bastard.
Evil? Nonsense. I am a man with vision. I see the chances that one must take in life and exploit.
And what chances are those? Killing innocent people?
Well, no one's perfect.
That's my favourite moment of me as Big Bad Dave. Whenever I whenever Butch is about to call me an evil bastard, I sort of cut him off and dispute that and say that I am a man with vision. I simply see the chances that one must take in life and exploit. So this defines Big Bad Dave's character. He does not see himself as being evil, even though what he has clearly done during the events of this film are wrong and very immoral. Big Bad Dave refuses to accept that he is evil. He doesn't see himself as evil. Most villains in the media or pop culture don't see themselves as evil. And Big Bad Dave is one of those types that he is simply an opportunist. He doesn't see himself as an evil man. He just sees the chances that most other people don't see in life and exploit those chances that only he can see, but most others cannot. He's simply a survivor, so to speak, in his own way. Clearly, a life of crime was his only way to survive and have any source of money or income. And that's why he has that attitude that he is not evil, but he's just simply a man with vision who sees the chances in life that not many other people see and exploit them. And I like how Ruben challenges me to that. What chances are those? Killing innocent people. And Big Bad Dave sort of brushes it off and says, well, no one's perfect. So Big Bad Dave has very little to no regard for human life, whereas Butch does, obviously, because Big Bad Dave's the villain and Butch is the hero. So they're both men in this film are survivors. Butch is a survivor because he's a crime fighter and something clearly bad's happened to him in his past to motivate him to become a law enforcer and a crime fighter and to go out and stop people like me. And me, Big Bad Dave, I also am a survivor, but for completely different reasons. It's like one man took one path and one man took the other path. Butch suffered hardships and chose the path of light to be the crime fighter and the hero. Something happened to Big Bad Dave and he took the dark path and chose to be a force of destruction and cause pain on people for his own expenses and his own advantage in life. And that's what I like, this clash of the morals.
Time's up.
Suddenly, a roundhouse kick, a surprising feat of strength from Big Bad Dave to take down a man who's physically bigger than he is. So this is the final showdown. We were blessed with such lovely, gorgeous weather for this film. It was a big summer action blockbuster for us to make, so to speak. I really like what I do here. Yeah, sort of pulling a King K role there. For those of you who have played Donkey Kong Country, you'll get that reference. No, Big Bad Dave still has some life left in him yet.
Or you shall die.
What about the coin?
Very well. I don't mind prolonging an execution.
This is what you get when you let obsession take over. Must have been heads.
You're just as bad as me, and the man's
Okie dokie, so before I get into the final reflections part of the review, in which I look back on the experience, I want to analyse the ending here a wee bit. So we just had this idea that it would be a very quick, brief bout of fisticuffs between myself and Ruben. I would throw the suitcase in his face, give him a roundhouse kick, and run away, because I no longer have any henchmen to protect me, and Butch sets after him. I fake my death, I pretend to have fallen, and then, like the opportunist that Big Bad Dave is, I strike Butch again and he knock him to the ground, and then I have him right where I want him, and just about when I have him in my grasp, Butch suddenly reminds Big Bad Dave of his little personality quirk of using his coin to decide how he kills people. And this was a good thing to sort of, for Butch to get the advantage over Big Bad Dave, to exploit Big Bad Dave's weakness, that he is an obsessive compulsive, and Big Bad Dave is so overconfident that he feels that he can safely do his coin decision whilst keeping Butch firmly in place under his foot. And then whenever he goes to do so, Butch takes advantage of the situation, seizes Big Bad Dave, and just tells him, "This is what you get when you let obsession take over." Which is such a great line, because it sort of shows how tragic Big Bad Dave really is. And as someone in real life who genuinely does have, I do have obsessive compulsive disorder in real life, so that particular line felt very, it hits hard for me in a good way. And then he gave me that good punch, and I fell over. And just as he's about to finish me off, Big Bad Dave suddenly turns into a coward and sort of pleads for his life in a way, by sort of saying, "You're just as bad as me, I'm defenceless," sort of trying to reach out to Butch's moral code, that if he were to kill Big Bad Dave while Big Bad Dave was lying on the ground, disarmed and helpless, that would make Butch no better than he. So at the end of the day, even though throughout the film Big Bad Dave appears to be a very powerful, intimidating and dangerous man, which he is, at the end of the day, if he's forced into a corner, he will show his true colours, that he's just a tragic little man and a coward. And obviously Butch pays no heed to his pleas and finishes him off anyway. I remember on that day telling Ross, well, if you want to kill me off, why don't we finish it with like this? And I suggested the idea that we finish it with a shot of the coin that Big Bad Dave uses falling into the palm of his dead hand, heads up. As Butch says before he kills me, it must have been heads. And I remember Ross's exact reaction to my suggestion: "Fuck yeah." He was quite enthusiastic about that idea, to end the film of the coin landing in Big Bad Dave's dead hand. I felt very tempted at the time to twitch my hand ever so slightly, just to maybe imply that Big Bad Dave might come back. But nah. Just my last opinion on my character in this film, Big Bad Dave. Again, I like the physical dynamic. We have the tall hero and a short villain, perhaps I have a bit of a Napoleon complex in real life. That's probably why I choose to play the villains in my films and play psychopaths. But, as a great actor once said, small psychopaths are always the best psychopaths. How do I know he said that? Because I was there. Robert Carlyle said that at a Q&A that I attended, and I got meeting him, and I remember calling him the Scottish version of Robert De Niro and made him laugh. Okie dokie, and now for what I like to call the final reflections part of the review, in which I look back on my own experience on making a project. I know this video has been long, but I hope you've managed to bear with me throughout it, and if you have, thank you. I have nothing but the absolute fondness and happiest memories on this particular project, because this really did spark a whole new era for my channel. And Enforcer Butch set a bar of quality for my channel, which I like to think that I have maintained over the years since Enforcer Butch was made in my films that I made since then. It was also good working with another director to help me make the film, just to have another perspective, a fresh pair of eyes to sort of show me a different way of doing things and showing me new ways to record a film and provide more advanced editing techniques that I wanted in the film, like proper gunfire and explosions to really give a proper authentic action movie look, akin to a Michael Bay film or something. I was very pleasantly surprised at the quality of the effects that were used in the film, and we all had great fun making it. Everybody took their allocated roles seriously, no matter how big or small their roles were. They all took what they had to do seriously, and I'm very grateful to everyone involved for making this film what it was. I was also very happy to bring back Big Bad Dave as a character, to give him proper justice as a villainous character, given how constrained I was in Street Hero because I was making it in school and I had a deadline to meet for that, and I was rushed and limited in what I could do with Street Hero and by extension the character of Big Bad Dave. So now that this was done in my free time, I was able, in my opinion, to give him a proper portrayal as this really serious, villainous character. And even though he does die at the end of this film, yes, he is dead, I do find a way to bring him back. Epic foreshadowing. But we will cover that in a future installment of Diamond Day of Retrospectives. And looking back, I am amazed at just how quickly we managed to make the film, because Enforcer Butch was uploaded on the 22nd of June. However, 11 days prior to that, on the 11th, I uploaded a vlog onto my channel to promote the film, and in that vlog I include my own version of the chase sequence scene at the beginning where the informant gets killed, just to spark interest and give the audience a taste of what was to come and to show off the film. But at that time, that was all we shot of the film, just that brief chase sequence and the death scene in the forest. That was the only footage that existed of Enforcer Butch at the time. So within the space of 11 days, less than a fortnight, we were able to record all the rest of the film, all the rest of the scenes, and Ross managed to edit it and put it all together for me, all within a space of 11 days. And I had no idea just how quickly we were able to do that, because in the vlog I said expect it within a month or so, and then 11 days later Ross came to my house with a USB stick with the completed film on it, and then we just uploaded it. That was it. It's amazing in hindsight just how easy and quick the film was as a shoot, getting all the footage done, all of it recorded, Ross compiling it all together and having it ready for me by the 22nd. So that was Enforcer Butch. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more content. Stay tuned next time whenever I shall be reviewing what I believe to be my best film, Vigilante. Ho ho ho. That is going to be the big one. So look out for that. Take care and be lucky.